I'm super excited to be on this panel with three top experts in the field. And I hope we're going to get into some spicy discussions about how AI is going to, save us all from all these terrible hacks and things that are happening in this space. I think one thing that we're going to be repeating a few times today is the near miss with the NPM hack that happened earlier this week. So yeah, with that, I want to give it away to our first panelist here to introduce himself. Yannik, you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my name is Yannik, founder of SoftStack. Been here with our company since 9 years, within cybersecurity and software development. So actually on the ground and seeing all that stuff happening, the good stuff and the bad things happening at our clients, but as well in the wild. I mean, happy to talk about the NPM hack. We've been on the ground and pushing as well code to the repo. It's been actually not that bad. So to give a hint.
Awesome. Vijay, do you want to go next?
Yeah. So can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you have a fancy mic, huh?
Huh?
We have got the poor ones. But nevertheless, I'm Vijay, originally from India, but living in Munich since 2013. I graduated my master's in TUM back in 2015. And yeah, it's always good to be back home, right? It's kind of a home feeling. And after graduating from TUM, I worked at Volkswagen, I worked at Siemens, two big German OGs in the Web2 space, I can say. And then founded BitsCrunch 5 years ago. We have got some really good backers like Coinbase Ventures, Animoca Brands, Polygon, Chainlink, and so many other VCs. And yeah, working on getting the blockchain data much prettier, where people can easily understand and obviously to onboard millions of people. I believe data is one way to do that, right? Because you can tell them what is happening through visualizations and through data. And that is what we do at BitsCrunch.
Awesome, amazing, thank you. Marc, you want to go next? Oh, it doesn't work.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Marc, and I'm the head of BD and growth at WebSC. So WebSC is focused on ongoing kind of due diligence for anything on chain, right? Whether it be smart contracts, wallets, tokens, and surfacing that data both to end users and to projects at any moment of interaction. And I think that fits very well with what we're about to talk about today. So yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation and hear your guys' opinions as well.
Awesome, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm also very excited. I didn't want to have any of the guests present themselves last, so I'm gonna go last. I'm Sebastian. I also studied at TU Munich, did my PhD here in security. And since then, I've worked in traditional enterprise. And in 2018, I was very lucky to find the Web3 space. And at that point in time, everyone was calling me crazy. But it was definitely a great decision. And here we are today. I myself, I'm currently leading out of our labs, which is a Web3 security firm. We provide security audits and other types of security services for Web3 companies, big and small. And that's a perfect segue to my first question, actually. The de facto standard today in Web3 security is to have an audit. If someone wants to launch a project, they've just maybe built something and they want to launch it on mainnet for users to actually deposit real funds, it's almost prohibitive to do that without an audit, because it's not necessarily uncommon for a lot of people to not deposit funds if they don't at least see a tweet about an audit or something like that. Now, the problem is that even projects that have been audited, as we've seen in the previous presentation with GMX, can be hacked. And that leads me to my first question. What do you think is the main process that inside of these firms is failing, and even with an audit, it leads to these kind of hacks? Should we start with Yannik?
Yeah, I mean, when we started with our company back in the ICO times, this was like literally everyone has had this checkbox, right? We need like this audit, but no one really cared about like what does it mean to have like an audit. It was like mostly like token contracts, and right now I'm not even like to audit that stuff anymore because it's not even fun for our auditors to to look into like 200 lines of Solidity code and say like, yeah, it's like standard, right? It's not really like where it should be the issue. But I think like most of the companies in Web3 gone already away from like just doing this checkbox stuff. It's starting to add as well the layers of bug bounty, as well the layer of active monitoring, social engineering, prevention in companies. But it's like this 1%, I would say, in our industry right now. And it shouldn't be different. I mean, it should definitely be different because we are financial products, like mostly in DeFi, it's financial products, like I would say even similar to a bank. So, and they have way higher standards, and we not have these standards in our industry right now. I think that's where it have to change first, like having like kind of standards in the industry and making sure like to add like something beyond audits. But it's, I would say it's not like, it's more like an issue of like the acceptance of founders and the acceptance of the projects to go for the stage forward to like a bug bounty. I would say this is like the lowest barrier, most deciding like do an audit and bug bounty. And then, but it's just like a fraction of your protocol, right? And there's like front ends, back ends. I mean, the weakest part, your off-chain audience, like your employees.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, has to be like a holistic approach on the security side of Web3 projects. So, but we've gone away from like having this checkbox audit stuff and projects, which is good.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, I would say like, it's more like, I would not say it's a financial problem for most projects. It's more like the acceptance of like seeing this issue in like a really fast moving industry. And that's where everything is fast moving, you forget the security.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great answer. And I would like maybe to come back on that point where you said it's not a financial issue for most projects. For some of them that are just starting up, even an audit seems to be a burden because they typically think about budgeting without security. And then there's the security is an extra cost. So Vijay, would you like to add something to that answer?
Yeah, having seen the whole cycle of launching a token, I clearly get the point, because audits have gotten a lot expensive these days, right? I mean, there are very few auditing firms that are sort of in the tier one mid range, and there are so many plenty of others trying to compete with the best of the best. But as you said, even the best ones fail, right? Because there needs to be an audit framework that should happen on a regular time basis, right? You do an audit for the token launch, or you do an audit when you launch a smart contract, and that's it. People have to do it at a periodical basis.
Yep.
Because they do upgrades. They bring in V2, V3s, and so on. But somewhere down the line, they forget this security puzzle, right? And how do people get credibility, or they feel more comfortable? Because even with the internet or operating systems per se, we have got Androids and the Apple OS. That has taken a hell a lot of years to be here, right? To be where they are today.
Yep.
And there are so many operating systems that emerged and crumbled. So people, at the end of the day, they should feel more comfortable of using any application. So be it DApp or be it app, they want to feel that secureness. And as Yannick said, blockchain is mostly about financial products. And particularly when you are talking to a financial smart contract, you have to seriously consider security as one of the top priorities, which founders obviously don't do. And in the bull market, there is a famous saying that there is no fundamentals in the bull. Right. And I'm really afraid that we are getting into that phase now where people take security for granted. but it should be a baseline where people should feel that, because at the end of the day, it is customers' money, it is communities' money, it
Yep.
is investors' money, right?
Yep.
So, se- taking security as one of the top priorities has to be the get-go from day one.
I totally agree. Mark, do you want to add something to that?
I think they've covered a lot of it, and I do agree with what you're saying, right? Like maybe 5 years ago, whenever a company was launching a token, they had the audit, they could slap the logo of the auditing firm into the website and be like, perfect, this is it, we've covered everything we need to do. But actually, as you were saying, like you're going to have updates, you're going to change the code, you're going to potentially release a V2, a V3, and doing an audit for every small update can be very, very expensive. So you need to find a way where you are making sure that these updates and everything is going through periodic sense checks, and you're making security a priority, not just for the engineers working on the smart contract, but everyone at the company needs to have that in their forefront, right? It needs to be a #1 priority, maybe second to making money. But that's going to be super important down the line. And as you're saying, we're getting to the point where, we're seeing some very big movements in the last couple of days in prices, and people are starting to, hey, maybe I'm going to take a higher risk and put some money into this DeFi protocol that just came out a month ago. It's like, okay, how can I make sure that nothing's going to happen here if they have potentially not even had an audit yet? And so going through these motions, it's going to be very important to have those continuous checks that they were talking about. Absolutely.
Totally.
I would even say, like, just to add something to this, we would see now way more like holistic approaches on Web3 security, because we're getting now the pressure from institutions. This is like the biggest thing that I've seen, right? Which is positive, I would say, because when you want to integrate like a DeFi protocol, which is, I would not even say it's often happening in DeFi for institutions to integrate a DeFi protocol into their stack, because the biggest problem is like the diligence that has been happening on that protocols, because they want to have like, they're coming with a high standard and they're not seeing this in our industry. So currently we have to integrate all that stuff into our projects to get adoption from institutions. I mean,
Yes.
we're running now into this problem. I've seen that a lot, and they're asking us like, how can we do like a better risk scoring on all this project if they're not having like just an audit on the token? Like, how can this happening? Like, what's a protocol? What are their third-party dependencies, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we have to get this pressure now.
Yeah, and if I may add something to that, one thing which is interesting, like you said, institutions are pressuring projects to do more. The thing is, once the projects have done something, like an extra something, and they've gotten the money from the institution, they sort of get more relaxed because they have it and it's a done deal. And then if they get hacked, then they lose the institution's money, whatever, One thing which I think is missing, and I think this conference does a lot in that direction, is regulation for Web3 security, to keep founders accountable. Like, people should be very much accountable if they build something and it gets hacked, right? They should, like, if a bank gets hacked, I guess, there will be consequences for the CEO, legal consequences, right? And I think that is something which is still missing, because if the founders will have such consequences, they will be much more motivated to do security continuously and not just
few restrictions, right?
yeah, not just once, right? Not just in the beginning before they get everything. All right. So thanks a lot for all those awesome answers. And in the end, we're going to have some time for questions from the audience. But let's move on to the second question. And this is, I feel like this is a bit cliche, but there's this phrase being passed around everywhere in Web3 right now with AI powered or powered by AI, or we use AI. And sometimes it's just like lacking substance, right? And, you guys have built some really cool companies with AI that, in my opinion, are not just hype. So I would like maybe to start from Marc this time and tell us a bit about, how AI can truly, go beyond pattern matching and maybe even predict if a hack or an exploit will happen, or predict, the risk or the probability of a platform being hacked or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is something that actually we're working on at Webacy. It's not necessarily related to hacks, but it's actually financial engineering manipulation of tokens. And that is something that we are using AI to not only detect, but also predict when those things could potentially be manipulated and things like this. So to explain a little bit, when you're looking at a token, it's not only the smart contract that can cause people to lose their funds, right? You have things like financial manipulation of people coming in early or buying up tons of the supply, messing with the liquidity. And these are all things that in the end, a hack or this is going to end with people losing their money, right? And you can use AI, and we're using AI not only to be able to detect, say, bundling or extreme concentration of ownership, but how are those funds being moved and in what ways, in order to predict when a token could potentially be rugged or when the liquidity is going to be tampered with, in order to, extract as much money, or the people, the hackers being able to extract as much money as possible from these tokens and these um, essentially, yeah, from the people invested into these tokens. And that's something that is very interesting, because you do have the tools and the data available for all of this. The problem is finding the ability to do that as a human is very difficult, because it's too much data to sift through. And you have these AI agents and tools that are able to sift through that data at speeds that is just impossible for us. And especially when you have tokens coming out every second, how are you going to be able to sift through all of that systematically as a human? It's very difficult. So that is one way that, we're using AI to be able to predict when these things are going to happen and be able to warn users that, we're recognizing that this is imminent. So, maybe be careful when you're interacting with these tokens. To give you an example, yeah.
Awesome. Vijay, do you want to tell us what you guys do in this direction at Crunch?
So at BitsCrunch, what we also recently released is a plugin, MetaMask Snap,
Mm-hmm.
right, for Know Your Transaction, KYT, right? And what we do here is, obviously we all know Schufa score here in Germany,
Yep.
right? So internally, we look at Schufa scores for each and every individual wallets, and we also do that for each and every individual assets, be it NFTs or whatsoever. So what we do is, potentially when a person clicks on a transaction, they are about to sign a transaction, we give a descriptive info that is also AI generated, not just AI generated in the caption, but we for real do it. And that is when people get to know what smart contract they are interacting with is safe or not, right? And we also did a POC with MasterCard, right? It is similar to our credit card transaction alert, right? Let's say if Vijay is living in Munich and if I am traveling to Singapore for token 2049, and if I swipe my card at an airport terminal, Changi Airport Terminal in Singapore, I'll be getting a text message or a call from Deutsche Bank, right? The bank that I use, saying, hey Vijay, make sure that you are the person who did this transaction. How do they know that? Because the previous evening, I might have done a swipe at Aldi here in
Mm-hmm.
Munich. And the very next day, my card is in Singapore swiping at an airport terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And not just this, but they take so many factors into consideration, like currency, geolocation, the size of the transaction, and so on. Exactly the same use case for crypto. And we have got already several thousand downloads for this MetaMask Snap, because you don't have to install a new plugin, new software, download anything. It is just MetaMask, which I believe everybody uses in a day-to-day life. And it is just that snap that has to be added to that MetaMask Chrome plugin, right?
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's pretty cool. That's very nice. Yannik, what do you use AI for at soft stack?
Right now, I mean, in our software development process, for sure. I mean, no developer who is not using like any AI tools right now to code, they will fall behind very fast, or even someone replacing you with AI. It's actually that fact right now for developers. In our auditing process, we're using some AI tools, some models to just run them over, especially like big protocols. It's really helpful actually. There's some modules which are actually pre-built, and like Claude, for example, Sonnet, pretty good in like building proof of concepts and figuring out like really specific cases where you as a human, it takes ages or like at least days to figure out like an exploit in this kind of way. Sometimes Sonnet is a bit like picky when it's coming to like, if you ask the question directly, find me some exploits within that contract. There's some boundaries, ethical boundaries. For example, if you use Grok, Grok is just going straight to it and finding exploits, not even asking questions. Seems like an open door there. So that's actually where we're using it, but we actively saying to our clients, like, please use a few models at least at Cursor and run it through your Solidity contract. And just to give us like, we don't need, I mean, we would do the same. So just do that before you handing over your code. That helps us a lot to already figure out all these small, low and medium vulnerabilities actually. And then when it's coming to critical and high vulnerabilities within some auditing process, there's still like AI can help you, but there still needs to be a human in the loop to figuring out like the edge cases with like real experience on Solidity auditing. Because there's a lot more than like having like a contract, especially if you like have third-party dependencies like Aave, which are maybe used for loans within your contract in your protocol. But it's definitely helpful. Wouldn't deny that.
Definitely, yeah, I can concur.
But would you agree like this now in the coming years, like AI against AI on vulnerabilities? Because I mean, attackers would use the same tactics, right?
Definitely, yeah. So in my experience, AI is getting better, but still sucks at finding bugs. I mean, it helps you understand the code base really well. And if you found a very good lead yourself and you can tell it, this line of code, I suspect there's this type of vulnerability that interacts with that other contract and so on, it definitely can help you write the POC faster than if you would just do it from scratch. But yeah, I think we're still a bit away from like replacing both developers and auditors, I think, with AI fully. I don't know how far. I don't know how fast things move.
I would say not too far. I mean, especially like the biggest problem right now has been already in auditing is like the tough timelines, what we're expecting in most cases. Of course, most projects want to rush to the market and launch because the time is right, and they don't expect like an audit can take like even a month if you have like, I would say 10, 30K of code lines on your backend and on the Solidity contract. Then it takes time. But
definitely.
That's like, we always struggle to get this right with the clients to get the acceptance.
I totally agree. And I think that goes back to maybe even the first question where we were talking about there need to be some standards, and there need to be regulators that enforce those standards so that things are not rushed. And it's more like, I feel like in this space, software development is similar to the aerospace industry, because like even a small bug could lead to a catastrophic outcome. Of course, in the aerospace, it's loss of life, not maybe just loss of funds if it's on an unmanned mission. Here, it's for sure going to be loss of funds, and sometimes a lot of funds. So, yeah, it needs to be a bit like, I think the saying from the founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, with move fast and break things, does definitely not apply in Web3. It's the way in which you get wrecked and you basically go bust. But the problem is that a lot of people building in Web3 have come from that mentality, from that era of Web2, and they're moving fast and they don't care if they break things. So there definitely needs to be something that changes, I feel like. Yeah. So moving on to the third question, and this time we're going to start with Vijay. We had this near miss at the beginning of this week where it was discovered that some attackers had compromised several widely used NPM packages. And when I say several, it was in the order of 15, around 15 or 16. And these were widely used in the sense that there were tens of millions of downloads of these packages, and by Web3 developers mostly. So that's a very significant amount of downloads, given that this space, this Web3 space, is not as huge as the Web2 space. So you could think about everyone is probably compromised. The attacker could have, if they would have figured out a nice way to siphon those funds or take them all at once so that no one has time to react, they could have done tens of billions in damage. Luckily, they did a small attack and they stole only, I think, less than $200. And
$96.
yeah, and it was detected, right? And I still haven't seen all the details, an exact point on how it was detected, but I hope AI had a bit of something to do with it. And then I want to pass it to you and ask, how can AI help to mitigate these kind of risks?
Yeah, I still remember that evening where every single group had this message: don't transact anything. If you are transacting any important transaction, make sure that it goes to the right wallet, right? So yes, AI was supportive in finding it. There were a lot of really good CEOs out there with mass following. They tweeted it so that the community is well aware, and that's the culture here, right? So the community-driven approach. People ask me why Web3, right? And it is all about going together and winning together, or even losing together in some cases, right? So community driven approach helps, right? And in Web3, as you said, it could be a little package that was built probably in 2018 or 19 that is still lying around in many of the dApps, right? We call it decentralization, but honestly speaking, we are still way too early in that journey, right? I still know teams who uses Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services for most of their use cases, right? And people, or if the management decides, they can even freeze funds. You know what happened with WLFI? They blocked Justin Tron son from transacting, right? So we have to be clear that we are dependent on several such small packages or small applications for whatever we build, right? And that is something that we have to truly understand, and we have to always watch out for these tweaks in those packages, because you never know, while you are sleeping, while you are eating, there could be some tweaks that happens on a JavaScript package that you use in your day-to-day life, right? So there is no truly independent software or system in Web3 yet, right?
Yep.
I believe we are all codependent or dependent on other packages or softwares, and that is why I believe security has to be one of the main focus, and AI is also going to be very good in finding out those bugs pretty early on.
Definitely. Thank you. Moving to you, Mark. This problem that we've seen with NPM, this attack, was due to a social engineering attack on one of the core developers. And this brings us again to AI. How can AI help mitigate against these attacks on supply chain, social engineering, front ends, back ends? It seems to be, at least in my opinion, as important as smart contract and on-chain code security, but it's not actually as well audited and tested as the on-chain part. And we're seeing now, in practice, how important that part is, because of course, in theory, everyone knew, but now we're actually, getting a bit of a taste of it. And we've seen several hacks on these parts over the last couple of years. So I'm really interested on your take on that.
Yeah, this is where the monitoring aspect of AI becomes so useful, right? you can create specified agents that can look for specific things like this. And you say, okay, if you ever run into something, just ping me. It's as simple as that. You're like, if this changes at any moment, just ping me. And that's like the simplest use case, right? This is where those things, for example, the package being updated, would come in, would be very useful, right? Then leaning more into the social engineering aspect. Unfortunately, this is something that comes with a lot of training and exposure, which is where, you know, companies need to put this at the forefront and make it a company-wide priority, where you're constantly training and testing employees. Unfortunately, the employees are the weakest link in a lot of these cases. And that is where you have to continuously test, continuously, you know, train and give them information, and have these AI agents look for anomalies. Where it's like, oh, this, for example, this employee is potentially updating a package at 3 a.m. in the morning. Why is that happening? You're like, okay, maybe we stop that update from being pushed until a superior or a more senior engineer can double check it. You know, these are just very simple security checks that can definitely be implemented, and AI can help with you know, the alerting and the monitoring of these things. And I do think that that is something that we're going to see a lot more of. So very specified agents that are controlling and looking out for very specific changes or anomalies that are going to happen, not only in code or update times or things like this, but even just interactions with wallets, or all of a sudden, you know, your users are logging into their wallet, but they're not interacting potentially with the right smart contract. And why is that happening? And you can have these alerts set up, and even allow the AI agent to stop something like that from happening, or stop those interactions ahead of time. Obviously, you need to trust that it knows what it's doing, which is, you know, slowly getting there. But yeah, so I think the specified agents are going to be the huge turning point here in those aspects.
Yeah, totally. That's a very good point. Yannik, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, actually afraid of the future, because, I mean, we said like there could be agents, right, which are helping us to protect, but there's as well on the other side the attacker having the same effort and the same budgets.
Absolutely.
This is like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm not sure actually where this is going to be in the next future, but we will see this kind of supply chain attacks a lot more often. And I mean, especially on the social security, social engineering attacks. I mean, that's like, haven't even got any. I got 1-2 requests in the past years regarding social engineering prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And this was serious projects, but there's like lots of other projects out there which are not even caring about that. And the weakest links are the developers, actually, running on their private laptops without any virtual machine, and like having access to like everything, SSH keys, just plain sight. And I'm not sure how this could change. I mean, that's definitely like the social engineering attack prevention is not even a matter of budget. It's not even like too expensive to do that. Or you could even do that on your own in your company. You could find some developer who like to have some fun on the weekend and then try to hack their friends or their colleagues inside the company. I mean, that would help you a lot to mitigate the risk of social engineering attacks, because this is like one of the biggest threats in like every company.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Humans are the weakest link in terms of security. And I wouldn't say only developers, but I've seen situations where they first maybe attack someone that is more customer facing, like business development or communication.
I think we've seen it on Coinbase, right?
Sorry?
We've seen it on Coinbase, right? Yeah.
So they typically try and then horizontally escalate to other people that have access to, like you said, keys and different systems that hold the treasury of the project or so on. I realize we're running a bit late, so we have 5 minutes left, and I want to give the opportunity to anyone in the audience who has any questions for some of our panelists. Please raise your hand if you have a question. If not, we're going to have another bonus question. Oh.
It's a very noob question. Who audits the auditors?
That's a really good question. Actually, I would say no one. That's like definitely as well like some initiatives which are doing like research on standards for the auditors, but it's not really going forward in a way. But I think there needs to be a major push of like identifying like what kind of standards has to be like an audit company in having to have that in place, especially for their auditors. I've seen a few cases where some auditors has been hired and they have been actually a weak link because they've seen some exploits and seen the value that can be extracted out of these protocols, and they had been actually hiding that issues until the protocol was launched on mainnet. And it got hacked, but funds got lost. I think now with institutionals coming into our space, into our industry, which has been Wild West, especially on the security side, we have to change that. Not sure when it will happen and how it will happen, but there are some initiatives out there which are working on standards for auditors as well in the security auditing space. But it's kind of a supply chain, right? So the projects have to say like, we need to see some ISO certifications of your company. We need to see some standards within your company, helping us to see like you working professionally as well on your end when you audit our company or our project. Lots of things needs to happen there, actually, still.
Did you guys want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, in the traditional Web2 world, big fours, we call it big fours, right? The auditing firms, they didn't happen overnight, right? There were regulations, there were certifications, and it evolved over time, and that is why Ernst & Young, or be it Boston BCG Group and others, they are here with certain degree of knowledge and certifications that have become a standard across the industry, right? And I guess it'll be a norm in the next few years, because now that the institutions are in, because the last couple of cycles were totally different. It was all about crazy NFT pictures and crazy DeFi run, right? But this cycle, I see a hell a lot of difference, because the governments are into it now, the institutions are into it, and I don't think they'll take security or these audits for granted. And there'll be stricter regulations, stricter norms, stricter certifications or eligibilities for someone or some company to announce them as an auditor, right? And I don't think it'll take long.
But I think like Wirecard is the best example of like having auditors within the company and closing one eye and seeing nothing on the papers, right? And I mean, actually, like we getting requests like, oh, can you please like mitigate that audit report in a way that you can lower the severity or remove that specific vulnerability out of our reports? Not sure what the reasons might be, but there is some ways where you, as an auditor, you have to have some ethical standards as well in your company, how you mitigate this kind of requests, especially when it's coming to like vulnerabilities when they are inside your report and shouldn't be reported outside if they haven't been mitigated or have been mitigated, and like representing like a bit of like, okay, you have like 100 bucks within your code base, right? And you still want to go live. How do you act as an auditor, right? What do you do? Because you got paid for it, right? You got paid to do this job. Definitely a few things as an auditor which makes life hard, but as well, I would say some ethical standards helping there a lot.
Marc, do you want to add anything there?
It's a very good question, and I definitely agree with Vijay here, where I think we're seeing the start of institutions, of banks, of like stables and everything, and the government's coming in. So I definitely think it's going to develop in the coming years, and I think that as that market within the crypto industry grows, you're going to see a lot more demand for like the ethical standards to be higher, for the code base to be double checked, to have ongoing audits. All of these things are going to start coming in. And yeah, I mean, if a lot of these projects are potentially open source or have the code out there, you know, you do have the bug bounties, you do have additional things that are going to be, you know, are compensating people for looking for these vulnerabilities. But yeah, I think it's going to come with time, and as the governments come in, as the big banks come in, they're going to want to have those double, triple checks to make sure that they are not the cause of any problems.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I wanted to add something to that question. In the beginning, I think in 2017, 2018, we were seeing audits coming in just through like a request form. And you would pick up that request form, you didn't know exactly who that person was, you maybe jumped on a call with them, and you did an audit for them as an auditor. I think nowadays, that is a big red flag. If someone reaches out to you asking for an audit, and you don't get introduced to them by someone you trust and they trust, there's probably something fishy there. So there's no one auditing the auditors, but there's way more, I think, trust involved in someone accepting an auditor as someone who's going to audit their code. And it only happens through introduction most of the time. I think it could happen through random chance by meeting someone somewhere. It's much less probable, and I think there were a lot of these kind of instances where it happened to be the project was a rug pull or some kind of scam. So I think both the auditors are very careful about who's reaching out to them, and also the projects always ask for introductions from the people they trust. So there's some kind of due diligence happening there. But really auditing the auditors, we need to have that same, in the first question, we replied with, okay, there needs to be an authority that mandates that projects have this kind of security processes in place and not just YOLO it. That authority probably also needs to vet the auditors and see that they know what they're doing. Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, unfortunately, but feel free to ask more questions from our panelists later, and a round of applause, everybody.
Thank you.
And in the spirit of Oktoberfest, once more this year, we have special mementos for all of our speakers. Bier Kruge, right from the TUM Blockchain Conference, so please. One more round of applause.